podcast where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we dig deep into the hidden profit killers lurking in your dairy operation. Today, we're exposing the $2.2 billion secret draining your herd's potential, one winged thief at a time. Sunshine and green pastures might look idyllic, but they're hiding a war zone. We're talking about horn flies siphoning 10 to 20 pounds from weaning weights, stable flies stealing 306 milk pounds per cow annually, and face flies spreading pink eye like wildfire. In this no-nonsense episode, we'll arm you with battle-tested strategies from Kansas State University's latest research, including the sanitation protocol cutting stable flies by 80%, the insecticide rotation schedule slashing resistance risk 65%, the economic threshold numbers you can't afford to ignore. Dr. Roger Moon from the University of Minnesota puts it bluntly. You can't manage what you don't measure. Fly counts are non-negotiable. We'll show you exactly how to implement his monitoring system and protect up to $300 per cow in lost productivity. This isn't just pest control, it's profit protection. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, folks, where we pull back the curtain on the stuff that really hits your farm's bottom line. And today, we're not chasing yields or scrutinizing feed rations.
Nope.
We're talking about something that buzzes, bites, and generally makes life miserable for your herd. And probably you too, let's be honest.
Definitely.
We're diving deep into the financial black hole that is fly infestations. Ever really tallied up what those tiny terrors are actually costing you?
It's a figure that would likely surprise, well, probably even the most seasoned dairy producers out there. We're looking at a staggering, get this, $2.2 billion drain. Billion with a B.
Wow.
On the U.S. cattle industry every single year, all thanks to these winged nuisances. So the real question for you listening today is, are flies silently picking your pocket, cow by cow?
Exactly. Forget the fly swatter for a minute. This isn't just about the annoyance factor, though that's bad enough. This is about cold, hard economics. We're going to dissect the real impact of these infestations on your dairy and hopefully arm you with some actionable intel to fight back. We're tackling the big offenders. Horn flies. Those bloodthirsty stable flies, those eyeball-loving face flies, and even the seemingly harmless but surprisingly problematic house flies.
And for our listeners, I mean, you're already juggling market prices, milk components, a million other things, right?
Always.
So our goal here is really to cut through the clutter, focus on the critical data and strategies that directly impact your profitability, and just as importantly, the well-being of your animals.
Yeah, maybe give you one of those aha moments. Connect what might seem like just a minor summer annoyance to some pretty significant financial realities.
Precisely. Okay,
$2.2 billion. It's an astronomical number. Let's try to bring that down to earth a bit, maybe to the level of an individual cow. How does that huge industry loss translate to what's happening in, say, your barn or pasture?
Okay, good question. Let's take the horn fly. A real perennial pest.
Oh, yeah.
The estimated cost per horn fly per cow per year is around $1.40. Now that sounds small.
$1.40 per fly. Okay.
But picture your herd on a warm summer day. It's not unusual, unfortunately, to see upwards of 200 horn flies on a single animal.
Easily. Sometimes more.
Exactly. So suddenly, that seemingly insignificant $1.40 per fly, well, it multiplies out to nearly $300 in lost production per cow. Annually.
$300 a cow just vanished because of flies. That's real money disappearing, often without maybe a second thought.
It really is.
Right. You might just think, yep, it's a bad fly year and kind of move on. But that casual observation is masking a serious erosion of your potential earnings.
Absolutely. It's not just about the cows being itchy. It's directly hitting the pounds of milk in the tank.
Yeah.
And it even hinders the growth of your replacement heifer.
Yeah, which you've already invested so much in.
And the impact isn't solely physical irritation leading to less grazing time either. We see really distinct behavioral changes in cattle when fly populations surge.
Oh yeah, you see it all the time.
Think about the classic signs. That constant tail switching, the foot stomping.
Yep.
You'll notice that, especially when stable flies are having a field day on their legs, those things bite hard.
Or the incessant head shaking and ear flapping. Every dairy person knows that dance, right? Usually prompted by those persistent face flies buzzing around their eyes, trying to get a snack of those secretions.
Exactly. And then you've got the herd bunching up together in the pasture, almost glued side by side, even when the sun is blazing down.
Yeah, trying to protect each other, I guess.
Exactly. That bunching, it's their natural defense against the onslaught, but it's kind of a double-edged sword, you know.
How so?
Well, on hot days, it significantly exacerbates heat stress, which, as you know, takes a further toll on milk production.
Right. More stress, less milk.
And let's not forget the cows seeking any respite they can find, standing waist-deep in ponds or huddles in the shade somewhere.
Instead of eating.
Instead of being out grazing and converting that forage into milk.
Which brings us right to the fundamental problem, doesn't it? All that energy the cows are burning trying to get away from flies, all that time they're not eating.
Yeah.
It directly translates to reduced feed intake. And in this business, I mean, it's a pretty simple equation. Less feed in equals less milk out.
It is that simple, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And when we drill down and actually quantify the losses caused by each specific fly species, the economic picture gets even clearer and, frankly, maybe a bit more alarming.
Okay, let's do that.
Let's start with horn flies. Just given how widespread they are and the sheer scale of their economic impact, over $1 billion annually across the U.S.
$1 billion just from horn flies. Wow. Makes you want to declare war, doesn't it?
It really does.
So what's the direct hit to production from these guys?
Well, for calves, we're looking at maybe a 10 to 20 pound reduction in weaning weight.
Yeah.
Research out of the University of Nebraska has consistently shown this.
10 to 20 pounds.
Okay. Now, for dairy operations raising their own replacement heifers, think about that loss growth trajectory. You're already pouring significant resources feed, caracta, into getting those heifers to the optimal size and weight for breeding.
Yeah, every day counts.
Horn flies essentially throw a wrench in those plans. They can delay puberty, potentially impacting their future milk production down the road. And the economic threshold for horn flies at a point where you really need to step in is around 200 flies per animal. 200.
Okay, it sounds like a lot, but when you're out there in peak fly season, honestly, sometimes it looks like they're wearing a second skin made of flies.
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
Now, let's switch gears to stable flies. I always seem to draw their attention when I'm doing chores around the barn. Those bites definitely have a sting to them.
Oh, they're vicious.
They're not just unpleasant for us. They're costing the industry even more than horn flies, a staggering $2.2 billion annually.
The full number we started with, yeah.
That's them. And their impact on production is substantial. We're talking about an average daily gain reduction of 0.44 pounds per day in growing cattle.
Nearly half a pound a day.
But what's particularly painful for dairy producers listening is the milk loss. Studies have shown that stable flies can lead to a loss of up to 306 pounds of milk per cow every single year.
Whoa, 306 pounds of milk per cow. That's like leaving money on the table every single day. You got to think about that on a herd basis.
Exactly. And what's truly shocking, or maybe surprising about stable flies, is their remarkably low economic threshold, isn't it?
Yeah, you mentioned that. It's not like you need to see a massive swarm before they start hitting production.
Precisely. It's surprisingly low, just 5 stable flies per leg.
Per leg can be enough to negatively impact production.
5 flies? Seriously?
5 flies. That seemingly tiny number can accumulate to a substantial amount of lost milk over a lactation. It really underscores the need for, vigilant and early control measures. No kidding. 5 flies. Okay. Now, what about those face flies? They seem maybe less directly linked to a drop in the milk tank, but man, they certainly drive the cows crazy buzzing around their eyes.
Yeah, they're incredibly irritating. And while their direct impact on milk volume might be less dramatic than stable flies, they still cost the industry over $53 million annually.
Still significant.
Still significant. Their primary damage really comes from their role as vectors for disease, most notably pink eye.
Ah, right. Pink eye.
We're looking at a potential 17 to 65 pound weight loss associated with pink eye in growing cattle. And in lactating cows that get infected, milk production can plummet by as much as 25%.
A quarter. 25%. That's a brutal hit if pink eye takes hold in your herd. Ouch.
It's huge. And it all comes down to those irritating little face flies carrying the bacteria around.
So what's the tipping point with them? When should you start to worry, start taking action against face flies?
The generally accepted economic threshold for face flies is around 10 to 14 flies per face. Once you consistently see numbers in that range, the risk of pink eye transmission really starts to escalate.
10 to 14. Okay.
They feed on those eye secretions you see, and in the process, their kind of rough mouth parts can actually create tiny abrasions on the cornea.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, makes it much easier for the Moraxella bovis bacteria, the pink eye bacteria, to take hold. And as they flip from cow to cow, they're effectively just spreading the infection around the herd.
Ugh. So, okay, we've covered the direct production losses, milk growth, but it sounds like this whole disease transmission aspect is like a hidden multiplier for the financial damage.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Face flies, as we've discussed, they're the prime movers in spreading the bacteria behind pink eye. But it doesn't stop there. Horn flies also have a kind of nasty side gig when it comes to the health of your young stock.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have immediately connected horn flies to other issues beyond just general irritation and maybe that lost weight gain. What kind of trouble do they cause?
Well, horn flies can be a significant contributor to mastitis in prepartum heifers. So before they even calf.
In heifers? How?
They tend to feed around the teat ends, and their biting action can create small lesions or wounds. These seemingly minor injuries then become perfect little entry points for opportunistic bacteria, particularly Staph aureus.
Staph aureus?
Yeah.
Not what you want.
Definitely not. And the really concerning part is that this can lead to infected quarters even before those heifers enter the milking stream for the first time. So you're potentially looking at lost quarters, impacting their lifetime milk production, costing you down the line.
Wow. That's a long-term cost that's probably easy to miss during the daily battles of fly season. Okay, and then we've got the humble housefly. They're just sort of everywhere, right? Buzzing around, landing on everything. What's the real threat they pose? They don't bite, at least.
Right. They don't bite, but don't let their non-biting mouthparts fool you. Houseflies are essentially flying fomites. Think of them like little dirty sponges, if you will. They're mechanical vectors. That means they can pick up a whole host of pathogens on their bodies and legs and then just transfer them to other surfaces. Think about them buzzing around manure piles, then landing on feed bunks, or even directly on your cows, maybe on milking equipment. They're really efficient at transmitting mastitis-causing bacteria and even the organisms responsible for calf scours.
So even the non-biting ones are trouble.
Definitely. So while they're not directly causing the irritation of a bite, they're certainly contributing to the overall disease challenge on your farm.
All right, so the message is loud and clear. Flies are not just a nuisance. They're actively draining our profitability through reduced production and increased disease. So, what's our battle plan? How do we, as proactive dairy professionals, start to gain the upper hand in this ongoing war?
Okay, the battle plan. The very first and most critical step is to recognize that early spring monitoring is absolutely essential. You have to know what you're dealing with and when.
Don't wait until you're swatting clouds of them.
Exactly. Waiting until you're swatting away clouds of flies means you're already playing catch-up, and you've likely already suffered some economic damage. It's kind of like waiting for your somatic cell count to skyrocket before thinking about your mastitis protocols, right?
Yeah, too late then. Reactive.
You're reacting instead of preventing.
Yeah.
An effective fly management program needs to be comprehensive. It needs a multi-pronged approach. There's really no single silver bullet here.
Okay, multi-pronged. So where do we even begin? What's the bedrock of a solid fly control strategy?
The absolute foundation, the non-negotiable first step, is sanitation and environmental management. This is often the most impactful strategy, and surprisingly, maybe, it can also be the most cost-effective in the long run.
Makes sense.
It's all about eliminating the places where flies breed. Simple concept. No breeding sites, fewer flies.
Right. If you can disrupt their life cycle at the larval stage, you're way ahead of the game. So what are the key areas we need to be laser focused on in terms of sanitation? Where do they breed?
Manure management has to be top priority, especially for stable flies and house flies. During fly season, you should really aim for weekly, or maybe even more frequent, clean out of barns, pens, loafing areas.
Oh, weekly.
Pay close attention to those often overlooked corners and edges. So, fence lines where manure and bedding tend to pile up. The edges of feed bunks where spilled feed gets mixed in. And particularly calf housing, calf hutches, group pens. they can become fly-breeding havens if not meticulously managed.
Yeah, those damp corners.
Exactly. In fact, there was a 2023 study out of Kansas State University. It demonstrated an impressive 80% reduction in stable fly populations simply through consistent weekly manure removal.
80%. Just from cleaning up manure more often? That's a game changer.
It's a massive return on a relatively simple practice.
Okay. And what about bedding? We rely heavily on straw in our heifer pens, for example.
Yeah, and soiled bedding, particularly straw, but other types too, creates an ideal habitat for fly larvae. It provides the moisture and the organic matter they need to thrive.
Right.
So regular bedding changes are crucial, especially during the warmer, more humid summer months. Don't underestimate how rapidly fly populations can explode in damp, soiled bedding.
Noted. Okay. And I'll admit, we can sometimes be a little lax about promptly cleaning up spilled feed around the bunks. Sounds like we need to tighten up our protocols there as well.
Absolutely. Spilled TMR, silage, grain, especially when it gets wet and starts to, ferment a little.
Prime real estate.
That is another prime fly breeding ground. Those moist, nutrient-rich pockets are exactly what fly larvae are looking for. Consistent and thorough cleanup is really essential.
Okay, manure, bedding, spilled feed, anything else in the environment that can contribute to a thriving fly population.
Water.
Water management. Yep, another critical piece of the puzzle. Promptly repair any leaky waters or pipes. You don't want those constant wet spots.
Right.
Ensure proper drainage around all buildings to prevent those stagnant, wet areas where flies love to lay their eggs. Even seemingly small, consistently damp spots can support a surprisingly large fly population.
And then there's composting. If you're composting manure, doing it correctly, that means maintaining internal temperatures between, say, 131 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit.
Hot enough to kill them.
Exactly. Regularly turning the piles to aerate, ensuring a moisture content between 40 and 65% that can effectively kill fly larvae while also producing a valuable soil amendment. So, win-win.
Good point. Okay, so sanitation forms the base of our defense, but even with the cleanest farm, let's be real, you're likely still going to encounter some flies.
Oh, absolutely. Eradication is usually unrealistic.
So how do we determine when those populations have reached a point where we need to deploy other control measures? How do we know when to act?
That's where diligent monitoring comes into play. As the renowned entomologist Dr. Roger Moon from the University of Minnesota has famously stated, and it really bears repeating, you can't manage what you don't measure. Fly counts are non-negotiable.
Can't manage what you don't measure, okay?
You need to establish an early warning system by actively monitoring fly populations. Start as soon as the weather begins to warm up in the spring. Don't wait.
Okay, so how do we actually do these fly counts? I mean, I can't imagine trying to individually tally every fly on a cow running past.
No, thankfully not. There are several practical and relatively straightforward methods. Sticky traps are excellent for tracking housefly activity, particularly inside barns and milk rooms.
Those sticky ribbons.
Yeah, or larger sticky traps. You hang them strategically, monitor the number caught over, say, a week, and track the trend. Spot cards are another simple tool, especially for houseflies.
Spot cards?
Just plain white index cards. You place them in areas where flies tend to rest: walls, ceilings, rafters. After a week, you count the fly specks. If you get 100 or more spots, that generally indicates a significant housefly problem.
Okay, simple enough.
And then there are direct observation counts for the flies on the animals. For horned flies, you'll typically observe one side of several animals in your herd, count the flies, and then double that number to get an estimate per animal.
Right, because they're mostly on the back and sides.
Just exactly. For stable flies, focus your attention on their lower legs, front legs usually. That's their preferred feeding site. Count the flies per leg.
Okay, remembering that low threshold of 5 per leg.
Right. And for face flies, well, you literally need to observe the faces of your cows and count the number of flies present around the eyes and muzzle.
Got it.
Yeah.
So once our monitoring efforts, the sticky traps, spot cards, direct counts, indicate that we've reached those economic thresholds we talked about earlier,
Yep.
That's when it's time to bring out the more targeted interventions, the chemical control option.
Exactly. But, and this is absolutely critical, your approach needs to be tailored to the specific fly species you're targeting.
Right. Not one size fits all.
Definitely not. What's highly effective against stable flies might be completely useless against horned flies, and vice versa. It all comes down to their different behaviors and life cycles.
All right, let's break down the chemical arsenal then by fly type. For those premise flies, the stable flies, and house flies that spend most of their time off the animal, what are our most effective chemical controls?
Okay, this is a crucial distinction. Insecticide ear tags and pour-on treatments are generally ineffective against stable and houseflies.
Because they're not on the cow much.
Precisely. They spend most of their time away from the animal, resting on walls, ceilings, fences, whatever. So you need to focus on treating those areas where they congregate and breed.
Makes sense. So what works?
Premise or residual sprays. You apply these to walls, posts, ceilings, other surfaces where these flies like to land and rest. These typically provide control for several weeks, but you'll likely need to reapply them every 2 to 3 weeks depending on the product and the conditions.
Okay.
Space sprays, mists, and fogs. Those can offer a rapid knockdown of adult flies during a really heavy infestation. Good for immediate relief, maybe.
But no lasting effect.
Right, little to no residual control.
Yeah.
And then there are various types of baits. Granular baits, bait stations.
Yeah.
You place these strategically in areas where flies tend to hang out. Just make absolutely sure they're inaccessible to feed, water, and the animals themselves. Safety first.
Always. Okay, so targeting their environment is the key strategy for those premise dwellers, like stable and house flies. Now, what about the pasture flies? The horn flies and face flies that spend a significant chunk of their lives on the cattle.
Right. For these species, on-animal treatments are much more effective because the flies have prolonged contact with the insecticide on the cattle.
So ear tags come into play here.
Insecticide ear tags are a very popular and, convenient option. They typically provide around 12 to 15 weeks of control, sometimes longer depending on the tag and fly pressure.
That covers most of the season.
Usually. For face flies, it's generally recommended to use 2 tags per animal, 1 in each ear, to provide better coverage around the head where they tend to congregate.
Good tip. 2 tags for face flies.
But a critical point with ear tags: don't apply them too early in the fly season. Wait until you actually reach that economic threshold. Remember, 200 for horn flies.
Right. Don't waste them.
Exactly. Maximize their effectiveness throughout the peak fly period. Pour-on insecticides can offer maybe 28 days, roughly, of protection. They're generally effective against horn flies and can also provide some control of face flies, especially with proper application along the top line.
Okay.
Sprays offer a quick knockdown, but require pretty frequent reapplication to maintain adequate control. Can be labor-intensive.
Yeah.
Dust bags and back rubbers, those are good options for self-application, particularly when you place them strategically in forced use areas, like the entrances to water sources or mineral feeders where cows have to contact them.
Make the cows treat themselves, basically.
Kinda, yeah. And finally, feed-through products are an interesting tool. These are larvicides added to the animal's feed or mineral. They pass through the digestive system.
And kill the larvae in the manure.
Exactly. They kill fly larvae developing in the manure. However, to be truly effective, you need to start using them about 30 days before the anticipated start of fly season.
Get ahead of it.
Yeah, and you have to ensure consistent consumption across the entire herd. If some cows aren't eating it, it won't work well.
Right. Consistency is key there. Okay, so we've got a whole arsenal of tools at our disposal: sanitation, monitoring, sprays, tags, pour-ons, feed-throughs. But I know a major concern among producers these days, and rightly so, is the development of insecticide resistance.
Huge concern. Absolutely critical.
How do we prevent our go-to control methods from becoming, useless over time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we need to take it very seriously. Horn flies, in particular, have a notorious, really rapid ability to develop resistance to insecticides. We have to be proactive in our resistance management strategies.
So it's not just if, but when, if we don't manage it right.
Pretty much. But there's good news. Research, again from the University of Nebraska, has clearly shown that rotating pyrethroid insecticide ear tags with organophosphate tags every season, just switching classes each year, can reduce the risk of resistance development by a significant 65%.
65% reduction just by rotating tag types each year. That's powerful.
It's a substantial benefit from a relatively simple change in practice. You just have to plan it.
Okay. So what are the key strategies then for winning, or at least, not losing this ongoing resistance battle?
Okay, number 1, rotate your chemical classes annually. Like we just said, don't rely on the same type of insecticide, pyrethroids, organophosphates, macrocyclic lactones, year after year for your tags, or even your sprays if you use them heavily. Make a conscious effort to switch between classes.
Got it. Rotate classes yearly. What else?
Secondly, as we touched on with ear tags, timing your applications correctly is crucial. Don't be tempted to put those tags in at the first sign of a fly in May. Wait until you reach that economic threshold around 200 horn flies per animal before applying those on-animal treatments.
Less exposure time for the flies.
Exactly. It minimizes the exposure of the fly population to the insecticide and slows down the selection pressure for resistance. And this next point is absolutely vital, maybe the most overlooked.
Okay.
Remove those insecticide ear tags after the main fly season has ended.
Don't leave them in all winter.
Please don't. Leaving them in over the winter when fly populations are naturally very low actually helps to select for those few individual flies that happen to have some level of resistance. You're basically breeding resistant flies for next year.
Wow. Okay. So make it a standard practice. Physically cut out those tags after the first hard frost.
Mandatory. Should be part of the fall checklist. And finally, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't rely solely on one single control method. Embrace an integrated pest management IPM strategy.
The multi-pronged approach again.
Exactly. Strategically combine that foundational sanitation, the diligent monitoring, and the judicious use of different chemical and maybe even non-chemical control tools like traps or biological controls where feasible.
Right. Hit them from multiple angles. Okay, so wrapping this up, the core message here seems clear. Effective fly management isn't just about keeping the guys from getting too annoyed, though that's important for welfare. It's really a direct and crucial defense of our milk checks and the overall profitability of our dairy operations.
Precisely. It's an investment, not just an expense. We strongly encourage you, everyone listening, to critically evaluate your current fly control protocols.
Yeah.
Are they working? Are you measuring? Are you rotating?
Yeah.
Consider implementing this comprehensive, multi-pronged approach. Combine rigorous sanitation practices with consistent, accurate monitoring, and then strategically deploy your chemical control options, always keeping those principles of insecticide resistance management at the forefront of your decision-making.
So as you're walking through your barns and pastures later today, maybe tomorrow morning, take a closer, more analytical look at those buzzing, biting pests. Don't just swat them away.
Yeah, count them.
Count them. And really consider the potential financial gains, both in terms of increased milk production, better growth, and reduced animal health costs that could come from actively and effectively crushing those fly infestations. What could that extra margin mean for the long-term sustainability and success of your dairy operation?
It's definitely something worth thinking about digging into for your specific situation.
Absolutely. A topic worth a deeper dive for every single one of us in the business.
If you're ready to stop being a fly buffet and start reclaiming your milk check, we've got your battle plan. Implement weekly manure removal from Kansas State's 2023 trials. Rotate pyrethroids with organophosphates annually. Start feed-through larvicides 30 days pre-season. Visit thebulvine.com/fly control for our free monitoring checklist and resistance rotation calendar. Help other dairy producers combat this $2.2 billion problem. Hit share and tag a colleague who needs to hear this. Next week, we're exposing the methane to money pipeline, how forward-thinking dairies are turning climate regulations into $1,200 head profit opportunities. Until then, remember, in the battle against winged thieves, knowledge is your best insecticide. Keep milking forward.
Where the future's more than just a word.